Selamat pagi. Good morning, everyone. Hope you all had a good rest. I want to teach you a new phrase, semangat pagi. It means energy in the morning. Semangat pagi? So today we have an exciting session this morning. I hope Petra and I fulfill your expectations for an energetic session this morning. Yeah. This morning's session, Innovation Talk, is about innovations and how innovations can solve some of the problems that we listened to yesterday. So yesterday we heard from academicians, from policymakers, from a lot of different people about the very pressing challenges that we are facing today. For example, how social norms are changing and things that we expect have a good impact, like, for example, labor participation for women that can have both pluses and minuses. And things like technology. It has both positive and negative implications, both challenges and opportunities. Disasters and how we manage climate change also have positives and negatives. So this morning, we will talk about how innovations can address some of these challenges. And we have a very exciting panel of 3 people. So we have Veronica Yates. I'd like to call to the stage Ibu Veronica Yates. Ibu Veronica is the head of CRIN. So she's the executive director of the Child Rights International Network. And she joined CRIN when it was part of Save the Children. And she led it to its independence in 2008. Veronica's leadership in CRIN has grown from 3 to 15 members of staff based in 4 countries, and they have active contacts in 160 countries. Her firm commitment to rights, not charity for children, has laid the foundations for CRIN's identity. Courage, the law, and plain communication are the routes to lasting change, not the latest trend or the biggest wallet. Let's give a hand for Veronica.
Hi, everyone. I have the pleasure to introduce and also call to the stage Pak Dedy Permadi from SiBerkreasi. Dedy Permadi, we agreed actually to first name basis. So Dedy is currently serving as the chairman of SiBerkreasi, which is a national movement on digital literacy. And since 2017, he's been working as expert staff on digital policy at the Indonesian Ministry for Communications and Information Technology. Dedy is also a lecturer at the Department of International Relations at the Gadjah Mada University in Yogyakarta. And he's also the director for the Center for Digital Society in the Department of Political Sciences in the university. His PhD is in public policy from the Lee Kuan Yew National University of Singapore, and he also has a master's on international relations from Universitas Gadjah Mada. He's been a visiting doctor student at the Department of Politics and International Relations at the University of Oxford, UK from 2016 and 2017. So also a round of applause for Pak Dedy.
That's a lot of top-notch schools there. Yeah. The next speaker, last but not least, is Meiske Demitria Wahyu. She founded SabangMerauke, a nonprofit intra-nation student exchange from 2012 to promote tolerance, education, and nationalism in Indonesia. Actually, had the privilege of meeting Meiske at the Forum KTI, the Eastern Indonesia Forum, and I was quite amazed by her work. SabangMerauke stands for 1000 anak bangsa merantau untuk kembali. 1,000 children travel to return, and also represents the 2 furthest areas of Indonesia, Sabang in Aceh and Merauke in Papua. Being from a Chinese Christian background, this is a close subject to her heart, and she is determined to show people the futility of the prejudices that people can hold on to. Meiske believes that every child will interact and be exposed to diversity. She believes that diversity and tolerance can't just be taught. They must be experienced. Welcome, Meiske. So this morning, the whole purpose is to hear about these three speakers' experiences, about the learnings, the struggles, the victories that they've had in creating social movements, how innovations can start within a confined environment, but then spread out and create social movement. And they are working right at the grassroots level with people on the ground, and we want to hear about their experiences. So without further ado, let's start this session. So the first part is about, we want to learn why they do what they do. What is it that you do? What is your purpose for doing the great work that you are doing? We'll start off with Veronica.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. So, why do I do what I do?
Yes,
Challenging question.
I ask that every morning.
So my organization it's a small organization. We're a children's rights think tank. So we focus a lot on policy, and we work with people all over the world, from grassroots to international UN experts. We're very lucky in that we are able to look at new and emerging issues. Because of the contacts we have, we look at new issues that have yet to be tackled or even understood in their relationship to children's rights. Being a small organization also means we can be radical, we can be outspoken, we can change quickly, we can do a lot of different things. So the way our organization has been built, especially recently, is on a set of principles. And the work we do, whether it's on the environment, pollution, climate change, sexual violence, protection from abuse, neglect, etc., the way we work is based on a set of values. So we believe in rights, not charity. In fact, we don't think charity fixes any problems. It's just short-term solutions. Children shouldn't have to wait for rich people to feel generous before they are allowed to eat. We believe in justice, not compromise. We believe in accountability, not apology. So we've set out all of our values in what we call the code. We also call ourselves feminists. We think the patriarchy, the power systems, the privilege of the patriarchy need to be taken apart and changed for all of us to have a more equal society. We also believe that we need to use creativity more in our work. Why are we so afraid to use imagination? I think, in fact, that one of our problems as NGOs is that we spend our time describing how miserable the world is and all of the horrible things that are happening to children. It's important that we do that and that we monitor and document what is happening. But if we are not able to imagine and describe the world we are fighting for, how are we ever going to achieve it? So we are spending a lot of time also trying to imagine the world that we are fighting for.
Okay, thank you, Veronica. She highlighted some key principles, but I think when you mentioned youth creativity, we've got these two youth who are quite young relative to myself maybe, but they've done a lot for their communities and the greater society. So, Mas Dedy, can you tell us a bit more about SiBerkreasi and what's the work that you are doing and why?
Yeah, thank you so much, Bu Anna. Semangat pagi.
Semangat pagi.
Okay, so I am going to talk about SiBerkreasi. SiBerkreasi is the national movement on digital literacy. We are working with more than 96 institutions and communities in Indonesia, working together on the issue of digital literacy. Why digital literacy? We see a huge gap in Indonesia nowadays. For example, we can see the rapid development of technology and internet and the usage of social media in Indonesia. We can see here in this country more than 142 million people using internet and more than 130 million people using Facebook, more than 90 million people using Instagram in Indonesia. And we can also see the readiness of the people. we see the rapid development of technology, internet and social media, but at the same time, we also see the readiness of the people. We should improve the readiness of the people in this country actually. So based on the reality, we see a huge gap between the rapid development of technology and the readiness of the people of Indonesia. We can see many problems in Indonesia right now. For example, hoax, cyberbullying, pornography, children exploitation online, and so on and so forth. So based on all of those facts, we are trying to empower people, increase, improve their capability to interact with others using social media, online platform, internet, and so on and so forth. So we are trying to address some issues over there. Digital literacy. The first one is positive content creation. So we empower people to have a capability to create positive content on the internet. The second one is also facilitating people to have a capability to handle negative content. For example, how we handle hoax, how we handle fake news, and so on and so forth. We are also trying to address the issue of digital parenting because this is a very crucial issue in this digital age. We work together with many organizations, for example, Sejiwa Foundation in Jakarta, ECPAT International, IDCOP. IDCOP is Indonesia Child Online Protection. We are working together to address the issue of the children and internet in Indonesia. We are also working on digital economy, digital lifestyle, and digital governance. So the basic idea is to empower people how to use internet and social media positively and productively.
Thank you, Mas Dedy. So a few highlights about how we can leverage the networks and the coverage of technology and all the innovations that come with it for things like transparency, parenting in the 21st century, and so on. Meiske, let us know about what SabangMerauke is all about and why you do what you do.
Thank you, Ibu Ana. Wow, I feel like I'm presenting my skripsi. So would you guys be kind and have big smile because this is not the formal session. I would share my story. So why we do what we do, personally, 20 years ago, I was affected by a huge wave of civil unrest in Indonesia. So there was 1998 riot in Jakarta and several areas in Indonesia. So as a teenager, that time my family was safe, but as a teenager, I grew up in confusion about my identity, being a Chinese, Indonesian, and Christian. That put me as a double minority. And also I grew up in a very homogeneous surrounding. So that time I felt like, am I belong to Indonesia, but am I belong to the mainland China? So there were confusion. So my turning point was when I had the chance to interact with people who are different, and that opened my mind, that gave me wider perspective, and that happened during period of my teenagers period. So that time I thought that I don't want anyone else, especially teenagers, to be trapped in silent confusion and hatred because they just don't know that Indonesia is so big and they have inherited prejudice from their parents, from the family, because they don't have option to talk with people who are different. They just knew that Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, or unity in diversity, were only at class. But there is no practical implementation because maybe most of the kids were like me. So they grew up in a very homogeneous surrounding in Indonesia. So they need to interact and be exposed to diversity. And 6 years ago, some friends and I created this SabangMerauke.
Meiske, did you want to show the video of SabangMerauke, or?
Maybe after this.
Okay, after this. So we heard from the three speakers about how their organizations have really come from a very personal space of values and principles. I'd like to strike a conversation about what are some of the most urgent issues that you see, and what are the innovations that each of your organization are trying to implement to respond to those challenges? I think some of the challenges we heard today, yesterday, but perhaps Veronica, starting with you, from your lens in CRIN, what are the most urgent challenges that you're trying to grapple with?
Another tough question. So I want to take a couple of steps back, and if we look at technology, generally speaking, there tends to be two camps. We either think that technology is, we fear it, there are just more risks, it's dangerous, it's leading us to a dystopian future, or it's going to fix all of our problems and very cheaply and very quickly. The reality is somewhere between the two, and the reality is that we can see some of the dystopian future happening today, and we can see some of the positives happening, but sometimes in a naive way as well. I think the first thing to remember is that we are not talking about new violations, we are talking about existing violations in a new space. And the reality is that our human behaviors, the way we organize our society, is what is happening online. It's not a different world with different behaviors. So the internet was initially created, so the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web, recently launched a new decentralized internet. He got depressed, essentially, because he realized that what has happened to the internet, which was meant to be a tool for sharing knowledge around the world openly, has become either a tool of mass surveillance by governments, which we are seeing everywhere, including the UK and other countries, and I can talk about that a bit later, or it's a few monopolies, a few corporations who are getting extremely rich at our expense. You know, we give them, we click OK a few times and they make a lot of money on our data. And for the rest of us, it's essentially a tool of mass distraction. So, you know, this is something to keep in mind. We're not, you know, our behaviors are just replicated online. And the reason why this is important is when we talk about children's rights, there is a tendency, and you know, I'm here, I have the microphone, so as long as I have it, I'll say what I think. There is a tendency to believe that you cannot protect children and enable them to use the internet safely and freely. And this is very dangerous, because what is essentially happening is we are allowing censorship. We are allowing people that want to polarize the world to censor information that children need. Children who are the most vulnerable, who need the information that they are not able to access, are the ones who are going to suffer. But the two don't have to work in opposition. So because a lot of organizations are focusing on online sexual abuse, of course, this is important, but there is more sexual abuse happening in the homes and in the schools, in children's real lives, before it happens online. So we need to tackle the source of the problem. It's not an isolated problem. This is really important. So what has happened because of that is that children are today the most surveilled population on the planet. And this goes for the entire world. There is absolutely no difference. In fact, the United Kingdom is leading on this, and they are then giving their technology for surveillance as aid package. So we have to be very careful and look at these in detail. The problem as well is that we tend to think it's complicated, I'm not a tech expert, so we leave it to the experts. And this is the problem as well, because ultimately the way the internet is organized is the way we organize our society. So we're just replicating the problems and not participating in decision making. So, I mean, I can go on forever, but maybe I'll stop here for a bit and then I can talk about some more dystopian stories and some utopian ones, but perhaps I'll hand over for a little bit.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from also Mas Dedy and Meiske. I mean, Veronica talked about this dualism, right? You have the internet provides, can be an enabling access to information, education for children, but at the same time it can cause harm. I think both Meiske and Dedy, you're trying to spread positive messages, positive values and principles to the greater society through some of your work. So can you tell us a bit more about how you're using technology, social media, and so on? Maybe starting with Meiske.
So, because we want to reach the kids from Sabang to Merauke, just to give you context, like in the introduction, the distance between Sabang, the western part of Indonesia, to Merauke, the eastern part of Indonesia, is further than the distance from London to Mecca. So unless we facilitate this kind of exchange student program, there is a likely chance that they will get one to another coincidentally. So we use technology indeed in terms of mostly social media. We have our publication for recruitment and for registration. We have Prilly here, our first volunteers who help us with the selection team. So we did manually, right? We scanned the forms, they downloaded the form from the internet, and then the teachers, the volunteers, the NGOs help us distributing the forms to the remote area of Indonesia. So we also put some contents, like slide contents about how we celebrating and nurturing diversity through pictures in Instagram, mostly in Instagram and Facebook. So yes, we are very helped with technology, but we do realize that this might be related with the kids, with the participant. So around last 2 or 3 years, we put in the curriculum of the student exchange program how to be wiser in using social media. That's how we got related with technology.
Okay. Can you talk a bit more also about how you manage some of the negative content that comes through the networks that you have? Because on one hand, you're trying to spread tolerance and diversity, but there might be people who want to tap into your networks to bring more negativity, maybe for an ill purpose. Yeah.
Actually, we are no expert in counter narrating the negative content, but we are quite fortunate that in our social media there were no bad haters that attack us. But we did have some comment when we had a program to visit some religious places, and there were comments that why do you bring these Muslim kids to the church? Why do you bring these Hindunese kids to the mosque and so on? But I can say that we can stop the conversation within the social media and not really spread along. So we try to reply the comment with not provoking comments, and if it gets hotter, then we choose to just stop and give like a closing statement.
Okay, thanks, Meiske. Mas Dedy, can you tell us a bit about the way you manage the digital literacy and digital parenting, bring positive messages?
Could you please show my slide again? Yeah. Okay, so basically SiBerkreasi is a place to collaborate. We are not a formal institution or a formal organization. We are a community. Currently, we have 96 institutions and communities working together on the issue of digital literacy. As you can see here, many stakeholders are working together from the academic side, CSO side, even artists. So Parvi 56 is part of SiBerkreasi as well. And you can also, some ministries are there. For example, Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. So we are working together on this issue. So what we are doing now is actually to collaborate one each other to create some innovations in delivering positive content to the public in Indonesia. You can see over there, we have School of Influencer. Because if we ask a kid, for example, what is your dream in the future? They can say, oh, I want to be a YouTuber, for example. So we have School of Influencer. We already done this project in 4 cities. And now we already have 80 local influencers. We just want to make sure that they all produce positive content for Indonesia. The second one, literacydigital.id. Literacydigital.id is a platform when people can access free ebook. They can download for free. More than 70 books are there. They can learn digital parenting. They can learn how to manage social media. They can learn how can teach children in the age of disruption, for example. So you can also access this literacydigital.id, and more than, I think, 200,000 people already download the books from this website. And we also have stophoax.id, when people can check whether this is hoax or not. We also have Kreator Nongkrong. So we have some influencers in Jakarta. And the head of Kreator Nongkrong is Mas Yosi, Project Pop. Mas Yosi is actually a leader for some influencers that we have in Jakarta. And we have kind of a regular meeting to shape our program, to shape our ideas, how to deliver positive content to the public of Indonesia. We also have Batik SiBerkreasi. We also done several campaigns on digital literacy via batik. So this is quite unique because we have a village, in one village in Yogyakarta, and they also did some campaigns on digital literacy via the pattern of batik. This is quite unique. So actually we are trying to do many things to work on digital literacy because we see this is a really huge work for Indonesia. We can see here more than 152 million people using internet, and in 1 year we only reach 141,000 people in 1 year. And we need to collaborate with many other stakeholders to spread positive content in Indonesia. So we still need more innovations.
Thank you, Mas Dedy. So you've reached 141,000 out of in 1 year. I think that's almost, that's already quite significant. But what other impacts have you seen from the work that you're doing? The results, and what are some of the key learnings from what you've done so far? Sorry, how long has SiBerkreasi been going on?
1 year.
1 year, okay.
Yeah.
Luar biasa.
SiBerkreasi just established last year in October. So what we have done right now is just like a small step to cover the whole internet users in Indonesia. So that's why I mentioned that we need more collaborations, we need more innovations. What we have done right now through all these programs, I think we can see the result during the local elections. When people imagine election usually relates to negative content. For example, cyberbullying, hoax, and so on and so forth. But at that time, we all, those members of SiBerkreasi, 96 members of SiBerkreasi, we work together to make sure that the content in the internet during the election can be maintained. At least we can minimize hoax. At least we can minimize cyberbullying. Based on the data from UNICEF, for example, the bullying rate in Indonesia is quite high, 41 to 50%. This is quite high compared to many other countries in the world. So we are trying to make a positive content during the election through some innovation, for example, video competition. This is like a small program actually, but I think the impact is quite significant. For example, during the election period, we have more than 10 competition, video competition, Instagram competition, how to make this election, like we can all enjoy the election. We can all spread the positive content about the election. The competition is about the idea, not about the cyberbullying or hoax. So that's why we face many challenges during the election, so we create some programs to face this challenge.
Okay, thank you. Veronica, I know you have some thoughts about tech activism and to what extent do we jump too quickly into prescribing technology innovations? Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yes. So I think there's a tendency, at least in the NGO world where I am, to have a sort of what we can call an issue blindness. So we think one problem can be solved with one solution, and you solve that problem and everything will be fine. And that tends to happen in the tech world, right? Here's a software, it's going to do this, everything will be fine. And of course that problem tends to create another problem. And this is in fact really ironic because the people who come to fix your first problem are the ones responsible for creating the first problem. So it's just kind of, it's a sort of circle of madness really, if we leave it up to the tech people. And of course, it becomes part of foreign aid, or it becomes part of, I mean, I actually want to talk about it as post-colonialism, really, because that's what it is. You look at Facebook that goes to various countries and say, we're going to offer you this limited access. It's free to the internet, except you're locked in to 10 websites that you can use, which are all American, and it's Disney, etc., and it's all about you buying, but they're selling it as free internet. Or, in terms of issue blindness, for example, the Gates Foundation has invented a remote control fertility microchip, right? Sounds completely dystopian, perhaps utopian, except they didn't think about who actually holds the remote control, right? Is it, they are talking about this technology, which sounds completely amazing, in patriarchal societies where women probably don't hold the remote control. So they actually can cause further problems by wanting, to develop these technologies. The question is, because we can develop this technology, does it mean we should? That, that is an important question that we need to ask. However, it's not all doom and gloom, because there is an extremely active society of tech activists, as we call them. And this is especially in the open source movement. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with what the open source movement is, but it's essentially people, volunteers who want to create a free and open internet society which is non-proprietary, so not Microsoft, not Apple, not all of these companies that have monopolies. And it's all run by volunteers, and the idea is that, you try and build something, you give it to the community, and everyone will then add on to what you're doing to help it work. And besides the amazing technology that they are building, it was so inspiring to go to these communities, because it's the opposite of what you see in the NGO world and academia, where we're always like, oh yeah, we're amazing, we've done this report, look at it. There, basically people are saying, I'm trying to do this, it's not working, can you help me? And so there's a real collaboration that happens because everyone's kind of on their own in trying to do this. So the approach to working is really, really interesting, and it's based on, it's by grassroots people. You know, this is where it comes from. People who can't afford or refuse to give in to the monopolies of the big corporations. And so in this world, we are seeing amazing things happening. Unfortunately, not enough of us know about it. So I can list some of the projects that I've seen, which were really fascinating. One of them was started in Nepal, and it's led by a group called Accountability Lab. And what Accountability Lab does is it puts together basic technology for civic participation, all ages. And so young people in Nepal, and now it's spread to Mali, Liberia, Pakistan, they decided, instead of naming and shaming corrupt politicians, we're going to start a TV show called Integrity Idol. So the idea is that we're going to name and fame. And so by using online tools, young people are essentially choosing their favorite politician based on the most honest and the most, those with integrity. And it's now being watched by 10 million people around the world. So that's a really nice way of using technology in a positive way and very grassroots. There's an organization which is led entirely by women, which is called Coding Rights. For those of you who are not aware, advertising towards women is always about, depending on what age you are, you're going to get adverts about having babies. After you've had a baby, you're going to get ads about plastic surgery or, diets or depression, etc. Women are targeted in advertising in a completely different way to men. So these women have developed, a monitoring tool to explain to you who is taking your data and how are they advertising to you. It's called Chupadados, which means data suckers. Coding Rights. It's absolutely brilliant project. There's a helpline in Pakistan for girls, because again, girls are surveyed not just by the state, but by their brothers or their parents in some cases. So there's a helpline specifically supporting girls on, how they can stay safe online and what they can do. There's also, for example, in Syria, you're all aware of the civil war that's been going on. Some of the things that happen online that we're not aware of is that a lot of governments erase information from the internet. In particular, things that might come back to haunt them, like human rights violations. And so there's a group in Syria that has created something called Syria Archive. And what they're doing is that as soon as information is made available, they save it and they upload it to this archive. And they're using the technologies that others are using for face recognition. They're using that to be able to identify what weapons were used, who is selling these weapons to these people using the weapons, so that for future potential truth or justice or human rights cases, the evidence is kept, because very often this information is deleted by states that are able to do that. I can go on, but I think I've talked enough. Or
maybe perhaps some of these initiatives that you mentioned, Accountability Lab and this Integrity Idol, Coding Rights, what is the scope that they're covering now? Is it a global initiative, or who are you working with to try to spread it more widely?
So, and I think actually there's another one that's in some ways will answer your question, is that there's an organization called Localization Lab. And this is run by 6,000 volunteers in, I think, 65 countries. And what they do, they're volunteers who translate software into local languages. And I mean local, I don't mean, Spanish and French. I mean, the local languages. And it's all volunteer run. And it also challenges the kind of US-centric language, of privacy. So for example, they were saying in some local languages, the word privacy doesn't really exist. So how can we talk about this? How do we translate that to the local language to enable people to access technology? So a lot of these are open and they're there. I think it's just that we don't know that they exist. I only discovered all of these groups in the last year. And all of these people, they meet at various events, and all of this information is available. I'd be happy to put a list together of all of these websites, because they're available in different languages, and they're always looking for other people to collaborate with. So if that would be helpful, I can do that after or people can come and talk to me as well.
Yeah, that would be good. So in a way, we're starting to talk about trying to create this greater impact through social movements and networks. Dedy is working with a lot of partners, and SiBerkreasi is a network within itself. Meiske, your work is from SabangMerauke. How are you planning to kind of expand the work that you're doing? What networks are you trying to tap into? I know you guys are started some conversations already to work together. Can you tell us a bit about your plans for expanding your work?
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I want to highlight the word collaboration because SabangMerauke cannot and don't want to work alone. So we need help for, like SiBerkreasi, we talk about the possibility to put SiBerkreasi content into our next curriculum. And yeah, so we try to have like multi-stakeholders approach because we just don't want to work with the private institution. Yes, we need funding from the private institutions, but we want to also tap for the government. Mas Yanuar was our advisor in the early stage of SabangMerauke because as the youngsters, we need some notable names so people might want to trust us. And not that he's old, but he's notable. And so we try to tap for the government as well and also the NGOs to collaborate with us. And we are volunteer-based. We are so proud with our volunteers because there are sort of stages that need to be done. If it is not happen in volunteer base, it will be so expensive and we don't want the cost to do this program hinder the access for the children to participate in SabangMerauke. So yes, we are open for collaboration and I am open to talk. So what we can do, the very basic things that we can contribute is to spread the words. Especially I see a lot of NGOs working in more remote area and we do want to have kids selected from every area from Sabang to Merauke, although we have limited participations.
Okay. What has been some of the feedback that you've gotten from the volunteers or others who have gone through this experience with you on SabangMerauke?
Yeah, we have the management issue for the feedback because all of the volunteers and it is quite challenging to ask time and commitment for the volunteers. Even if they want, sometimes they just have limited time. So our strategy was to divide the section of what we can do, what we can contribute. So it is divided into the first process was the selection process. So there were volunteers in selection process for the interview, reading the essays, making phone calls for interviews, the children and also the parents and also the teachers. And then after the selection process, it goes to the program. So we have like a sort of 1 year board of management volunteers management. It is for 1 year until from the selection process until the kids come to Jakarta for 3 weeks. And then during that, we also have raising awareness division and also funding division. So people can enroll based on their availability and their expertise.
Okay. Maybe Mas Dedy can also talk about how you're a network, a huge network. How do you try to keep everyone connected and still, working towards the same goals and the same vision of spreading positive messages?
Keep everyone connected is the biggest challenge in our community because we cover, again, more than 90 institutions. It's not easy to maintain those all networks. But we are trying our best to connect each other. For example, we meet regularly, yeah, and we have also evaluation every year. And I think I want to highlight one thing. I remember what Professor Helen Markets from Oxford University said. Um, she has a book, very interesting book. I think Mas Yanuar very familiar with this book, Political Turbulence, How Social Media Shape Collective Action. In this book, Prof. Helen Markets actually mentioned that the political situation really depends on the micro donation, how we donate our micro posts, likes, tweets, and so on and so forth. So it really depends on how people respond to our movement, not only the member of SiBerkreasi, but all the public of Indonesia. That's why we also create what we call as Pandu Digital. Pandu Digital is volunteers at the local level. Now we have Relawan TIK Indonesia. Relawan TIK Indonesia has more than 8,000 members in 34 provinces in Indonesia. And we work together with them to donate our micro content for the positive content of the internet in Indonesia. So I think this is the biggest challenge to keep all work together, but we are trying to, like encourage each participant to participate in this movement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mas Dedy. I think with the three organizations, I'm sure it hasn't always been a smooth process, that there have been some failures and frustrations along the way. So I'd like us to talk a bit about what were some of the biggest learnings, the biggest challenges that you faced, and what you envision for the future, starting with you, Veronica.
So I think what I've learned is that I really don't know anything, I think. But I've decided to embrace that as every day I can learn something new. And I think by starting to work in this sort of tech activism world, I've been so inspired to see a completely new way of collaboration that is grassroots, that is passionate, collaborative, that I thought I had seen, but then realized I was actually very frustrated with. So there are always other people doing other things better than we are. And so it's given me a sense of, constantly question what we do and constantly question the assumptions that we make, I think. And I think what's really, really important is to work with people from different sectors. It's so easy to just work with people who kind of agree with us. We might disagree on one word or one phrasing, or, how you ask that question, I would ask it this way, or you call it protection, I call it rights, But that, then fundamentally we all work in similar ways, but working with people who are very, very different, come from a different profession, speak a different language, look at the world in a different way, then, you have to go in with complete humility. And just, you have to put your ego at the door, you have to go in with complete humility and say, okay, this is what I have to offer. It's not very much. And then you kind of realize, oh my God, there are all of these other aspects of the struggles that we think we are, fighting for, that others can actually fulfill in different ways. So I think that's, I know nothing, but every day I learn lots of new things. So I think that's my contribution.
It's a good approach. Assume that we don't know anything, and then we're not always right, and be open to others' views and perspectives. How about Dedy? Your biggest failures, maybe learnings?
The biggest failure, learning, again, how to make those 96 organizations and communities working together. It's really hard to have, excellent collaboration among us. I have one video to show our dream together. This is produced by Cameo Project, one of the member of SiBerkreasi. Maybe by watching this video, we can see our dream together for Indonesia. Could you please play my video?
Tolong aku melolong, baca sosmed bikin aku bengong. Banyak berita isinya bohong, bikin orang jadi saling menggonggong. Seperti ada niat sebar kebencian, tanpa peduli akan ada kerugian. Seperti dapat munculnya permusuhan, karena tertipu jadi curigaan. Gue pernah baca hoax di sosmed, yang jadi merugikan tukang trompet. Katanya trompet bisa bikin kanker, trompet sih cuma bisa bikin bibir doer. Sylvester Stallone dibilang mati, Brad Pitt juga dibilang mati, Mr. Bean, Jackie Chan juga dibilang mati. Seneng banget doain orang mati. Harusnya ada etikanya bermain sosial media. Tak bisa asal mengirim tanpa dipikirin, bisa fatal akibatnya. Bersihkanlah udara kita dari kebencian. Sebarkan saja cintamu untuk Indonesia. Wahai kepada pengguna sosmed, mari bersatu sampai lengket. Jagalah persatuan, jangan lobet. Hati-hati banyak tukang copet. Hey, jangan sampai salah posting, bisa bikin orang jadi pusing. Cek dulu itu penting, jangan jadi cepat terpancing.
Gue pernah takut salah minum, karena bahaya buat tulang sumsum. Hampir semua merek disebutkan, gara-gara itu gue kehausan. Gue tertipu isu PKI, katanya jutaan sudah dipersenjatai. Akibatnya gue keluar biaya, bikin persembunyian bawah tanah.
Harusnya ada etikanya bermain sosial media. Tak bisa asal mengirim tanpa dipikirin, bisa fatal akibatnya. Bersihkanlah udara kita dari kebencian. Sebarkan saja cintamu untuk Indonesia. Bersihkanlah udara kita dari kebencian. Sebarkan saja cintamu untuk Indonesia.
We invite all of you to work together with us for digital literacy for the better future of Indonesia.
Thank you, Dedy. So that's a very inspiring video. For those of you who didn't understand the text, it's about putting some ethics, thinking before you post something on social media, think of the implications on others, and how do we spread messages of love and clean up the hate in our society.